Hi guys, it's Elle. Welcome to another eGirl anime review. Today we will be covering Dororo. The story of Dororo has multiple different tellings. There is a manga, an anime that was cancelled halfway through in 1969, a PS2 game in 2004, a live action movie in 2007, and finally this show in 2019. The most complete versions are probably going to be from the video game or the show, and today I will be focusing on the anime. So here we go. I super liked this anime, but it took me a little bit of time to get into it. I actually watched episode 1 when it first came out on Amazon a few months ago, and then finally rewatched the episode again and binged the whole thing in one sitting. So it takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to the art style, I think, but I really think that it matches the tone of the anime and I really enjoyed it. The animation style is extremely fluid and the fights are super cool. This is kind of a spoiler, but as soon as the demon unicorn thing comes out at the end, just wait. It gets cool. The opening song is super catchy. I hardly ever skipped it, so it'll probably go on your playlist. This review is going to be chock full of spoilers, so if you would like a spoiler-free look at the anime, please check out my cosplay prep video that will be coming out later next week. This anime focuses on a main character named Hyakimaru. His father, Kagemitsu Daimyo, a feudal lord of Ishikawa, sells the boy to a bunch of demons in exchange for his land to be prosperous. Right now, the country is plagued by war, so he thinks that this is the only way to save his people. But of course, as all anime goes, that comes with a bunch of complications. The boy is meant to die, but he somehow survives. So the maid is told to take the boy to the river and kill him, but instead she puts him in a boat and sends him on his way. This anime was split into 2 parts on Amazon, which I actually really enjoyed. So part 1 focuses a lot on the idea of family. Since Hyakimaru is sent off into the world, he has no one to rely on. An old man finds him and takes him in. This baby is a wreck. He has no skin, no eyes, no teeth, nothing. But this man, luckily, is a prosthetic maker, so he makes this boy a bunch of limbs and raises him as his son. Of course, Hyakimaru meets Dororo early on in the season, and that's where the action begins. They go on a journey to regain Hyakimaru's body while also enjoying their youth. We are also introduced to Tahomaru, which we discover is Hyakimaru's younger sibling. He doesn't know that Hyakimaru exists, of course, because they got rid of the baby immediately, and he always feels this disconnect between his mother and his relationship with her because she is so distraught over the loss of Hyakimaru. She saw him alive, and the father ordered Hyakimaru to be disposed of, and she never really got over that. Tahomaru discovers his parents are hiding something from him, and as any child would, he gets extremely curious and goes out to find what they're hiding. On the other hand, we have Hyakimaru, who is regaining his body by fighting a ton of kyojin. He is discovering all sorts of senses and limbs that he didn't have before. Dororo is sort of his spirit guide throughout this process, and it's kind of funny because Dororo is a small child and Hyakimaru is a teenager, so we have this kind of weird sibling relationship that develops by Dororo teaching Hyakimaru how to be human, essentially. And I think it's really interesting the way that they tell this story together. So a lot of it focuses on vignettes as they travel around village to village of how each group of people live. And I think it does a really good job to establish how impoverished the country is, and it also introduces this idea of certain villages having a symbiotic relationship with certain monsters. Hyakimaru has to kill them in order to regain his body, so we really find this moral dilemma, and it's interesting to see how he responds and how Dororo responds and grows depending on his actions. There's these certain arc that I feel like I need to talk about that really surprised me in the anime. When we meet the orphans, I think this is the end of season 1 that have kind of established a camp for themselves, and Hyakimaru and Dororo stay with them for a while and help them for a while, we discover that they are trying to get their own land. Hyakimaru is killing himself trying to fight for them because of his own hang-ups with him recently regaining his hearing. So while he's fighting that monster, we kind of focus more on the kids and on Dororo. There's an older girl who is taking care of all the little kids, and we discover kind of in the second episode of the arc the way that she's gaining money is by prostituting herself. And they actually show a lot more than I was expecting, so if that's a trigger for you, just keep an eye out. But I think it's really noteworthy to see Dororo's reaction towards discovering what the young girl's job is. It makes a lot more sense in season 2 when we discover that Dororo's a girl, because she says that it's the one job that her mother would never do, but that she's proud of her for taking care of these kids, and that even though she wouldn't do it, and even though it's not something that she's comfortable even being around, that she understands.
私は恥ずかしいとは思ってないから生きていくためだもの。でもあんたが近寄りたくないのもわかる。汚れ仕事だものね。それにしてもあんたくらいの年でよく私の仕事がわかったね。
おいらおっかちゃんとずっと旅してて、いろいろその時どんなに腹が減ってもおっかちゃんが絶対やらなかった仕事だから。
そう偉いおっかちゃんね。
だけどそうやっておっかちゃんは死んじまった。おっかちゃんは偉いけど生きてる姉ちゃんも同じくらい偉えよ。偉え。戦でなくしたも戦から取り返してやるんだら。どんどんぶんどってやれ。田んぼも畑も全部。
ありがとね。
I think that was a really progressive stance to have, especially for a manga that was written in 1968. So that really stood out to me. Then we move on to part 2, and I think that this is really where the story starts to take off. This section focuses a lot on femininity and the idea of motherhood. There's sort of this idea that's kind of danced around in the anime, and I did some research on my own, and it turns out it was confirmed in the manga, at least, that yes, she's supposed to be a girl, but identifies as a boy. And I think that there's a few things we can take away from this. On one hand, we find that Dororo is raised by a bunch of anti-samurai fighting guys. Dororo is raised by an anti-samurai faction. She was brought up to fight and survive, and so when she discovers this older brother type character, she naturally falls into the younger brother trope and is more comfortable in that role. But as we can see, she has a lot of maternal instincts in how she takes care of Hyakimaru. I also find it really interesting to note that a lot of the monsters in this part of the season start to take on the form of women. A lot of them bakeru, what's it called? A lot of them transform into human women in order to navigate. There's this one interaction where it's one of the only times that Hyakimaru lets a monster go, which is the only time this has ever happened, and I don't think they ever bring up whether that impacts his body or not, since he does get it all back at the end. But I thought that was something to think about.
やっぱりどっちかが死ななきゃならないようだね。殺すのはダメだ。おはぎ、今までもこれからもだろう。
There's there's also something that's kind of neat that a lot of people might not notice, but this anime has a lot of representation for disabled people. There are kids that are missing limbs, there are blind people, there are deaf people, and of course there's Hakimaru, who is basically all of the above until he regains his body. And like I said, only probably a small percent of the population will even notice, but it's really nice to have representation like that in anime. And none of these characters are hurting because of their disabilities. They're all really strong and really deep characters, and so I think that was, like I said, really progressive for the era, and I think it was neat. And of course, we come to the main finale. There's a lot that happens at the end. Hyakimaru gets really angry at the world and at his family, and even at Dororo for trying to preserve the relationship that they had, and goes back because he really, really wants his body back because it's something that they stole from him, and he doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care about the villagers that he's hurting or the children that he's potentially putting in harm's way. He just one-track mind. And this is kind of where him and his brother Tahomaru meet and butt heads like crazy. Tahomaru feels an obligation to his people to protect them and kill Hyakimaru because he's the one thing that is stopping this demon's blessing. Tahomaru decides that the only way that he can fight back is to go and also make a deal with the demon. It's explained that there's one part of Hyakimaru that's protected by his mother, and so Tahomaru goes and takes that part from the demon, his extra eye. And so we finally get them at an even footing, two partial demons fighting each other, and this is where the animation is just phenomenal. The fighting gets crazy. The story, they do this thing where they go fighting Dororo's story, fighting Dororo's story, and it kind of breaks up the action a little bit, but it does explain the ending very well. And I think that it's interesting how Dororo is coming to this conclusion on his own, that the only way that they are going to be able to survive as a nation is not to depend on demons' blessings or Hyakimaru dying or anything like that. The only way that they're going to save their people is by individually gaining strength. And I think that this is where we see Dororo really grow up. Until now, he was a little kid. Now they are growing and they are realizing their potential. Ultimately, for Hyakimaru, the reason for all of his misfortune is because his family was taken away from him. And at the end, the only way he's saved is by his family coming together for him. His brother is there, his mother comes to him, and also his adopted father comes to check up on him and make sure he's okay. And they're there with him when he finally regains his sight. I think it's really crazy that at the end they let the whole family die in the fire. But I think it's cool that they kind of pass the torch onto Dororo, like, you're his family now, you're the one who saved him, and Hyakimaru takes Dororo and they are able to escape, and that's episode 23. Since now Hyakimaru is saved, he's a full human being. He goes to his real father, who's desperately trying to salvage any sort of relationship he had with these demons, and he forgives him. And I think that is really a satisfying ending, that even though your family will betray you, and even though all kinds of crazy things can happen, ultimately the only way that you can save yourself and you can move on is by forgiveness. And I think it's a really good message.
なぜだ。
俺の行く道はそこじゃない。俺は人だ。あんたも鬼神になるな。人として生きろ。
I definitely recommend this. 10 out of 10. Takes a bit to get into, but hang in there. It gets really good. If you enjoyed this anime, I recommend checking out next Devilman Crybaby. I know that this is kind of a 180 in terms of tone, but hear me out. This anime also starts with a boy who's turned into a demon and explores his relationship with humanity and his soul. Keep in mind that episode 1 is filled with shock factor, and it's definitely a more adult themed show. So if you can get past episode 3, I think that you will like it. I'm sure many of you have seen this because it was Crunchyroll's 2018 Anime of the Year, but if you missed it, I will do a review later on my feelings of the show overall, but I recommend you check it out before I do that. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this with all your friends. Definitely, if you have an anime that you are interested in that's similar thematically, let me know in the comments so that I can check it out because I love this type of show. And also send me anime memes on Twitter. Thanks guys, @elpastel, love you, bye!